I'm sorry.
This is going to be interactive, Marvel.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Action.
Okay.
I didn't put my makeup on.
Andrew, you going to join?
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
I think I got here at 9 a.m. for nothing.
That's a good point. That's a fair point.
Just for shits and gigs.
All right, so what's today, Andrew? Tuesday, April 17th, 9 o'clock, our first formalized training. Andrew, can you come over here? So, I mean, the camera's here. And Markle, can I have your full attention?
Yes.
So we are going to start doing Tuesday morning training / role play. I don't want any comments from you about that. So I want to do two things today. I want to talk about cash appointments, or how to approach cash discussions in your normal listing appointments and conversations over the telephone, and some common cash-related objections. Markle Bear. So you have been on lots and lots of appointments, dozens of appointments now, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And so, understandably, you're kind of you've historically approached these appointments as being like listing sort of only type opportunities.
Right.
I also did that at the beginning as well, which I found to be a mistake, because I think there's a lot of cash opportunities sort of hidden within what appears to be a listing appointment. So when you first go on an appointment, or you're having a conversation with somebody over the phone for the first time, and you're vetting them, talking to them about setting an appointment, what's the approach that you take, Markle, in terms of evaluating? Because most of your people think that they're going to get a cash offer, right?
Right.
So you're going in there knowing that they have that expectation, but in your mind thinking listing. So how do you cross that bridge?
Well, I kind of use, I guess, the cash offer as, or not presenting the cash offer as a way to build rapport, and just basically to make the clients feel like I'm looking out for their best interest, to where I'm like, I mean, you don't want to take the cash offer when you can net so much more if you were to list it.
Okay.
And I think that kind of...
Okay. So do they, so you're basically saying, you're using that as sort of like a trust building tool, saying, hey, I could give you a cash offer, but now I've seen the place.
Right.
Yeah. Who have you listed with?
Yeah.
What kind of pushback, if any, have you gotten around that? In terms of, let's say, somebody's like, yeah, okay, but I thought you were going to give me a cash offer.
Yeah, I mean, there are some people who are like, well, what's your cash offer anyways? And then when I mention it, most of the time they just scoff, and they're just like, oh yeah, that's ridiculous, I wouldn't take that.
Right.
That's probably the reaction that I get most of the time.
Okay. How are you coming up with your cash offer amount?
I usually just do the comps, see what I think it would sell for as is, and do 60% of that.
Okay. All right. So, I think that's, I think what you're doing in terms of positioning the cash offer as a stepping stone to building rapport and developing a relationship such that you're making a recommendation that seems appropriate and they feel is in their best interest is a good sort of instinctual thing to do. I mean, that's right. I think there's probably an instinct to go there too soon, and part of that is conditioned on the response that you're getting in the instances where you do tell them what the cash offer is. Because nobody's, I mean, how many times has somebody been like, oh,
yeah, no,
I'll take two. Nobody's like, nobody's saying that, right?
Right.
So I think that's, and so it gets to a point where you're just like I want to avoid it. Like I don't even want to tell them, right?
Right.
At which it makes sense in some cases, but I think what you will find is that there are people who are more motivated to take the cash offer than might seem at first blush. And why might they be sort of unwilling to disclose that to you in the early part of the conversation?
I mean, obviously in the beginning, people are going to be really guarded about everything, and I mean, all they know about the cash offer is what they've seen from a postcard or whatever way that we've reached them. They don't really know the actual benefits to the cash offer, and I guess I don't really push that as hard in the meeting.
But at the same time, you're going to have people who are saying something like, you know, you might expect that somebody would say, you know, I really want a cash offer because I just want to make this. You know, the only reason somebody would be calling off a postcard, you know, they may not really understand the process, but they're doing it because why? What are they trying to avoid?
The hassle of the traditional sale, essentially.
They want to make it easy, right?
Right.
They're not calling for a cash offer because they think it's going to be like a pain. They're doing it as a way to avoid calling a realtor or like putting it on the market. Like most people have enough sort of understanding that they know it's going to be, or they expect it would be sort of an easier path than working with an agent. So like that part they know. They may not know any of the other details about like why it's necessarily easier or how much the offer would be, blah, 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 blah. But if they have called for a cash offer, that's a sign, a decent sign that they have at least some interest in something easier than a traditional sale. So if you are, but most people when you show up are not going to say something like, yeah, I'm looking for something like easy. I'm looking for something that's like going to be convenient for me and it's going to be more streamlined and I don't really want to deal with an agent. Like nobody says that, right? And how many times have people said that? Like,
No.
Very rarely, right? So why do you think, you know, given that they are calling probably because they want to do something that's a little easier, why do you think nobody is really saying that part?
I don't know. I guess it's like they just don't really want to let their guard down because I guess the main assumption with a cash buy is that it's going to be a low ball offer, and I'm not sure if they're worried about they're not going to get as much as they want or.
Yeah, I think it's probably part of it. Andrew? Hello?
Yeah.
Andrew.
You want my answer?
What's the question?
Why they don't like really show that they're motivated to take a cash offer when
Right.
they
So if they
clearly
call
call
off a postcard, they probably have some amount of motivation to sell their house in a manner that would be easier than working with an agent, right? They may not understand all the nuts and bolts of it, but they're calling off a postcard because they think maybe this will be like a quick and easy way to do this, right?
Mhm.
But most of the time, people don't tell you that. On the phone, they don't tell you that in person. They're not like, hey, I'm glad you're here because I don't want to deal with an agent really, and I'd like this to be quick and easy and convenient for me. So let's talk about your offer. You know, people don't say that. Why?
because they think letting their motivation be known, or even desire to have like an easy sale, kind of hurts their negotiating power, and they think it'll affect our offer, even though we really know what it's going to be regardless of that.
Yeah, I think that's to some degree correct. Do you think that sometimes people, you know, if somebody knows that it's going to be easier to do it with an investor, they probably also know that the offer, while they may be hopeful it's very good or market value, they probably know it would be less than what they can get on the market. They may not have any idea how much or how the process works, but most people can come to that basic conclusion on their own if they're calling it a postcard. It's going to be a little easier, but I'm guessing it's probably not going to be as much money. But if you tell them, like anytime you tell somebody, you know, you can get more money on the market, right? You're saying, hey, you can get more money doing it this way. People are generally not inclined to say, I don't want more money, right?
Right.
Like, who's going to say that to you? Not a whole lot of people. Well, why do you think? Why do you think they would say people aren't going to express that motivation if you're guiding them in another direction?
Because I guess they don't really know what's best for them, which which way of sale, I guess, would be the most beneficial to them, and that's why
It
we're
could
there
be,
to
it
present
could
them
be,
the
but
options.
it could be, but they obviously have some inclination towards doing something that's easier. So why do you think they're being, most people are kind of going in the direction that you would push them?
Because we're good salespeople, we push them towards what we think that
Okay,
they
yeah.
should do.
I like the confidence.
We're excellent salespeople, that's true.
We're excellent salespeople, and they'll do whatever we tell them. So,
Yeah.
given that, you should just tell them to take the cash offer.
Right.
Because there's probably some level of like embarrassment, right? They don't want to admit to
That
you
they're
that
weird.
you're like, I want, you can get more money on the market. Most people are going to say, okay, like, who's going to be like, I would not like more money.
Yeah.
I want to get less money
Right.
with you.
Right.
Yeah, it's hard for people to admit that, even if they want it, right? And other reasons that people are calling off a postcard trying to sell a house this way is because they don't want to open up their house to other people, right? They're embarrassed maybe about their house, or they're weird about having other people in it, or whatever crazy ideas they have about like somebody's gonna come in and take pictures of the open house, whatever it is, right? They have some like fear about having other people see their house.
Right.
So that's also something that people aren't necessarily going to tell you right off the bat, right? Like, no, I'd rather take less money because I'm afraid to have other people see my house. I don't think anybody's ever said that to me. Have you gotten that?
I think maybe.
Not much.
Yeah.
Occasionally.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yes, maybe.
Okay. So, like, for example,
But so that, I guess, could be a good cash prospect if someone says that, possibly, as long as they have equity as well, of course.
Yeah, that was the big downfall of the
They
one
just
where
didn't
they were
have
like,
equity.
I mean, I don't really care about getting more money. I just want to be done with it. They were pretty much underwater, so
Yeah.
it was like they just wanted to be free of their mortgage and be done with the property.
So that's exactly right. Like, if somebody's telling you they don't want people in your house, they hate real estate agents, they hate paying commissions, they want it to be quick or easy. I mean, those are like super easy signs to pick up on that you should be focused more on the cash offer, right? They're basically telling you that's what they want.
Yeah.
Right.
But a lot of times the people who will tell you that are the people that have no equity because they know that they don't have any options. So like it's more hopeful. They're going to be more like trying to get you to buy a house for what they owe just to get them out of debt. Somebody who has equity is going to be far less inclined to say something like that, right?
Right.
Yeah, maybe they'll just think, investors, you're like a developer, and you're going to pay me more than the house is worth because you're going to turn into condos or
Yeah,
something,
something
even if
like
like it's in Capitol Heights or something. They still kind of have that. Yeah, like you said, I think it's just a hope.
Right.
That's not really based on anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they're probably feeling they're a little more desperate, right, than somebody who has tons of equity.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you are dealing with, but the people that we want to buy for cash are people that have equity, right? It's going to be like not inclined to say something like that necessarily, not commonly. So right out of the gate, if you're sort of using the cash offer as a stepping stone to build rapport, which I think you can do later in the appointment, right? If it really is going in the listing direction, that's a line that you can use. But using it early almost like totally closes the door. It's hard to open that again, right? It's hard to, if you're like, you can get more, and you really should be putting it on the market, you get more money on the market, and then 10 minutes later you're like, you should really do it. I think the cash offer would be good for you. You're going to be like, right? It's hard to backtrack.
Yeah.
So you have to sort of explore the cash offer first. Otherwise, like once you close that door, you're never going to get it back. It's going to be super hard. And sometimes people are going to be like mad if you just kind of close that door early, go down the listing rabbit hole. They may not express it to you in the meeting, but then if they don't sign up and 2 weeks later you talk to them, maybe they say something like, well, I really just want the cash offer. And that wasn't apparent in the meeting. I don't know if anybody's ever said that to you. People have said that to me.
Not really.
Did they ever say that to you?
I haven't had that response in there.
Yeah.
Where they were just looking for the cash offer now.
Be like, I really just wanted to do something like a cash offer. I didn't want this. Even though they
Yeah,
were
but I've
like,
definitely heard stuff like that in my appointments.
yeah, Even though they were like open and seemingly receptive in the moment, because they're like trying to be polite. But so how do you sort of cultivate or start the conversation? What's another way instead of just jumping right into the listening piece? How can you further explore their motivations at the beginning? So you come in, you do a walkthrough, blah blah blah. You're talking to them about whatever, small talk, the house, etc. How can you better position yourself to have a meaningful conversation about our cash offer before you delve into the listening side?
It's probably one of the biggest things is how quickly they want the process to go.
Okay.
And if they're looking for something just to turn over very fast and they just want to pick up and move somewhere, then that would be a big indicator that the cash offer might be a good one to push.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's a good one. That's definitely correct. That's probably one of the more obvious things, though. If somebody's like, I really need to be adding here in 30 days, then that's a huge buy signal for cash, because perhaps they have to be out, or they've got some dire situation, whatever it may be. They're moving for their job, whatever. A lot of people are not going to be in that position now if they have equity. They don't have to. Most people, if they have equity, they don't need to be out of the house in 30 days, right?
Right.
Yeah, we don't find that a lot in the cash offers, that somebody has like a super hard deadline. I need to have it sold in 30 days. What's the battery on?
How do you check that? I mean, you turn right back on. Is recording again? I'll keep an eye on
Battery
it.
thing on the screen.
It's like your phone, except it's a camera. As the battery indicator.
It's like a
Resident
Where?
Wizard.
Do you see it? No.
Oh, maybe you guys see it? Okay.
I'll just keep an eye on it.
Did it just turn off?
Yeah, just turn it off.
But now it's like fine, so I don't know.
That's not right. People don't want to have showings. They don't want to have open houses. They don't want to have people coming to their house. What's another like key thing that people have in their mind? Like there's a misconception that that more than half of people have, I think, about what it means to work for realtor. They think they're going to have to do what in preparation to sell their house with an agent.
Mix it up.
Yeah. Like agents tell them that all the time. They constantly hear from agents that you need to do this, 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 and this, right? And they don't want to. And sometimes agents will be like, you need to redo all your bathrooms. Like most people don't understand the concept of selling a house through an agent as is. Like without fixing anything, repainting the walls, touching everything up. They think that you just have to do that. And I'm not sure why that is. Maybe it's just what most agents tell them. I don't know where that comes from, but in my experience, that's what most people think.
Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah, that's definitely true. And specifically, it's either they just might not feel like doing it.
Right.
They're just like kind of too lazy, or they just kind of can't. They realize they just can't manage. They just like can't manage their life well enough to coordinate and get a contractor in. They just don't know how to even go about doing it. They just don't want to deal with it. Or they may just not have the resources to do it. They just don't have the money. They just like can't. Like your guy that has the $1,000 or whatever, right? He'd be a prime example, right? He just cannot get the money together to like do it. So they just don't think that if it doesn't look good, I can't sell with an agent. A lot of people think that. Yeah.
So in your experience, you find that it's bypassing the time and maybe small financial investment is the selling factor for the cash offer? Just not having to fork the money to fix the bathrooms, or?
It could be financial. I think it's probably more likely to be they just don't want to do it. Like
Yeah.
It's like laziness, not or they just don't want to. They don't have the time. They just don't. That's not what they want to do. They don't want to deal.
Right. I mean, a lot of times it's like sort of weirder people in general who seem to be better like cash prospects. Like I said, they just can't effectively manage their lives, and yeah, just people who are a little bit off, sort of. Like it's not really logical. It's not logical really at all, right? I mean, like anyone logically should want to spend a little bit of money to get a much higher price with an agent. It's kind of like also like if you sell like a used car to like CarMax instead of like taking the time and hassle to post it on like Craigslist and deal with a bunch of inquiries and having to meet with a bunch of buyers on it and try to get the top possible price. Like a lot of people are just going to be like, screw it, I'm not getting as good of a price. but it's just so much freaking easier. I don't have to deal with all this crap.
Absolutely.
Like I just know there's a lot of crap I just don't want to deal with. That this idea in my head.
It's like not worth the time.
Yeah, it's not the time. It's not the hassle.
They just don't
too.
want to do it.
Yeah.
They just don't want to do it. Like they get it. Like that you see that in all aspects of life. Selling a car is a perfect example. Selling lots of things, like a used iPhone. You can get more if you sold it on Craigslist than if you took it to one of those places. Like that's just the way most things are if you want to sell them. You can sell them to somebody and they have to make it easy for you for less. Right? Like I had 2 doctors who are signed up for a cash deal. They certainly have the resources. They certainly have like the ability, intellect, and sort of can manage their lives effectively enough to, and they're already out of the house. It wouldn't be that hard for them to do some work, pay somebody to do some work and sell their house for an agent, but they just didn't want to, right? They could, but they didn't want to. So like, that's a big thing. Like, so like either somebody will not really, people don't really think that they can just plop it on the market as is either. I think that's not people's first reaction. So they may be, and that's what these people thought, these doctors. They were like, well, our agent told us that we would need, people in this neighborhood really want everything to be just right, and then we need to do this, this, and this. And that's just not true. And I don't even think they believed me when I told them that wasn't true.
Yeah. And it's not true in this market. The other thing just to be aware of, like there's market cycles in real estate. Just so happen that the market's super hot right now. If this was 2010 or something, then there may possibly be some validity to that, because like if it's not renovated, it just would like sit on the market. It's a super depressed market, meaning that it's a what the fuck is it? It's a buyer's market. Now it's a seller's market. But now it's just different too. So part of it is just sometimes people just are they have a different idea from where the market used to be of what needs to happen, but now they don't realize, hey, the market's changed. People will buy anything, what condition it's in. So market cycles also just play an effect in that.
And anything will sell at a certain price too, right? So, so that's, I think that's a big thing to be like fishing for. But like, how do you find out if somebody just basically doesn't want to deal, right?
The question, why are you choosing to sell with an investor as opposed to a realtor?
That's a good question. That's a
Yeah.
good question. Sometimes people will give you a non-answer to that. Like if you can get them to answer that, that's a great question. Like if you can get them to open up, that will get solicit some useful information. Sometimes they say, hey, well, I'm just exploring all my options, right? So then what would you say? I have paisleys on my pants.
Well, after that, I would say. I was just wondering what options. Maybe try to ask it in a different way.
Just keep the conversation going,
Yeah.
right? What other options have you explored?
Okay.
Right?
Perfect.
Yeah, that'd be a good follow-up. Yeah,
Yeah.
what other options to explore?
No. Like I think instead of like, I think all of us tend to, we have sort of like questions in our minds, right? Like we know we need to get the answer to certain questions.
Yeah.
Like what's your motivation? What's your time frame? How much do you want for the house? There's basic questions that all of us need the answers to, no matter whether on the phone or in person. And sometimes our sort of instinct is if we ask one of those questions, however we may position it, like what's your time frame? Why are you thinking about working with an investor? They will give us a non-answer. And then we're sort of like, oh, okay, you should expect that, and then you have to push through that. So when you get like a non-answer about one of those questions, what would you say in that situation, Mark? If you're trying to find out like what my motivation is on terms of cash, let's say you're early in the appointment and coming in, you're saying, like, what's your cash offer?
Well, I mean, first I'd obviously go through the original prompt and everything. Kind of like branch off to what Tony was saying. I would say, like, if you don't sell to an investor, like, what are you planning on doing with the house? Because I guess that kind of puts like a means to the end. Yeah, like.
So then you get, but I'm sure you've gotten some sort of like squishy answers, right? Like, I'm not sure yet.
Yeah, be like, okay, that's cool. I mean, like, how soon were you looking to sell that?
Pretty soon, next
Okay.
3 months.
Okay, so then I would just go over like the basic procedure for like what a listing would be like, what they could expect from that. Then I mean, if it was more like a cash prospect, I'd probably like harp on excessive commission costs, closing costs, and stuff like that, stuff that would dig into their pocket in the end. Then go into showings about how they're an inconvenience, how we'd have to get pictures, let people in, and then I'd kind of like factor in how, I mean, the cash offer, once you factor in commission, closing costs, time, everything that you would need to do to get it fixed up, it would be about the same for,
Well, it's never going to be about the same.
well, yeah.
I think your instincts are generally right there, that you are kind of explaining the situation to them. You're telling them sort of, you have option A, and these things will happen, versus option B, and these things will happen. I think one approach that I think can be effective is doing more at the beginning. You know, a lot of people kind of want you to, you know, you can ask some questions at the beginning, and you should be, right? A lot of people will give you sort of short answers at the beginning of the meeting, or give you kind of non-answers, or put it back on you. You're the one that called me, whatever it may be, right? They're looking for you to kind of start the meetings. They have their guard up when you know, for the first 20 minutes or longer, right? They're like, I don't know who this person is. Like I called them off the postcard, this little sketch, right? They have their doubts, so they're not going to be likely at the beginning to just open up and tell you all their darkest, you know, secrets and fears, whatever, right? No matter how good a salesperson you are, or how much you look like Tony Robbins.
Yeah, that's true.
And part of that too is doing the upfront agenda as well, right? You know, like we talked about.
Yeah.
So can you do that just like how you do, you know, like when you do just the initial intro into the agenda?
But yeah, so typically how this works is we're going to walk through, take a look at the house. I can run the numbers and everything. If we can come to a number that you like, great. If not, no worries. We can let you know what other options you can explore that best fit your needs.
Yeah, I think that's decent. You know, so we're gonna walk the property. We're gonna chat. I'm gonna run my numbers, like you said. Put together what our cash offer would be. If that offer works for you, great. We'll sit down and go through the paperwork. I might just like add that part in, although it's, you know, it's a little less likely on yours, but still, I think you can just add that in. Just see if they're ready to like make an actual decision today. And then if not, no problem at all. You know, we don't buy every house that we look at. So I think you basically got it.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing to do.
So at least set their expectations.
Yep.
And then, you know, potentially you could even possibly add a time frame if you wanted to on the meeting. You know, we'll walk the house with you, take like 10-15 minutes. At the end of it, we'll sit down, I'll run my numbers, look at the comparables, make you a cash offer. If it works for you, great, we'll go through the paperwork. If not, you know, just let me know. It's no problem at all. So you could add in a time frame too if you wanted to, but I don't think you have to.
So I think that is, yeah, all of that I think helps sort of like break the ice a little bit. It sets their expectations. It makes them feel more comfortable because they know some of the things that are going to happen, right? Opposed to like just letting somebody in. It's like, okay, I want to see your crib now.
Yeah, they don't know like how long it's going to take. They don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
They're worried you're going to hard sell them. So that's why you always have the pressure off statement. Where you say, hey, you know, we don't buy every house we look at. You know, if it's a no at any point, just tell me. Are you comfortable telling me no? You can like add that in if you want to, just to make sure it's really clear and knows okay.
Right.
So almost everybody you meet with is going to have some trepidation about, you know, they don't really know what's going to happen on the meeting. They know, you know, like they probably recognize that they don't know. They probably expect that you know more than they do about houses and selling houses and buying houses, right? So that puts them on the defensive, and they don't want to be hard, they don't want to hard sell, just like John said, right? Everybody is sort of like at their guard on those things. So when you're kind of walking them through the options, like how do you present? What's a way that you can present the options that is disarming, but still sort of an effective sales technique without them feeling like they're being pressured at all? So you walk through the house, you sit down with them. How can you get that conversation going?
I mean, I guess this is after you've gone through asking questions about where they want to be, when they want to be there, and all of that. You can just be like, I mean, based on your situation. I mean, there are a couple options you could take. I personally, if I were you, I would suggest like a cash offer. If it was a cash offer situation, or like based on how much you guys still owe, I don't think our cash offer would be great. So I think that it would make more sense for you to list it, or to try to get a retail buyer to pay what a retail buyer would pay for it.
So I think at that point in the meeting, my thought is it's probably too early to be telling them what you're, like, giving them advice, telling them what they want, because you probably don't know yet. Like, I think what you're doing makes sense. Like, you're trying to help them in a way. You're like, here's what my advice would be. I think this is what would be the best thing for you. It's probably not the most effective approach, though, because people tend to clam up a little bit as soon as you're like, I think you should do this, right? People
People don't want to be pushed.
Yeah.
They don't want to be guided. They want to come to the decision on their own.
Yeah.
Just in sales in general.
Right.
Like, hey, Mark, I can tell, man, this is the car for you. Right? Do you think that's the car for you, or you automatically like, what are the other cars?
Yeah.
Like, how do you feel when I say that?
Definitely pressed to make a decision on what you're suggesting. So
Right, but I mean, are you inclined to pick that car because I said that, or are you like are you more or less likely to pick that car?
pick the opposite card, which you suggested if you just came up and said that.
Right, you sort of have your guard up and you're sort of like, what are the other cars? Like, why is he trying to push me into this? What's his like agenda?
Yeah.
Just that's any sales dynamic.
Yeah.
I don't want that car. Right? So, another, like, I think an effective tool, I'm curious, John, speaking about this, especially at the beginning of a meeting, like, you are talking to them, you're obviously trying to build rapport and all of that. But I think most of the time at the beginning of the meeting, people are cautious, and they sort of want to hear something from you at the beginning, something where you're telling them, providing them with some information, giving them some comfort, you're demonstrating some expertise, and you're not selling them. And it's like the best way to disarm them. So like it's going to be very hard to go into a meeting and get them to just start talking, right? You're going to have to do a little bit of talking up front in a sort of like I'm providing you with information in a non-aggressive, informative way. I'm showing you expertise to get them to come down a little bit before they're really going to start talking to you about their true motivations. So during that period, I think it's a mistake to start with a recommendation. I think at that point you want to be just
So you educate at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So just change that, Mark, in your sort of mind, right? So you're saying that you do the agenda, you walk the house, you're building rapport, you're sitting at the kitchen table or whatever at this point.
Yeah.
And then your next transition is that you're just you're starting to educate them on the
Exactly.
different options. So just switch that, Mark, instead of, and I tend to do this too, instead of trying to guide them into, I think you should list or I think you should sell for cash and here's why. Just start educating them on the different options and how it works. And that's what he does well. It's establishing yourself as an expert in it. So they're like, wow, this guy really knows his shit. Like I trust that this person knows what he's talking about, and his advice is like sound and valid. So that's like where I think you're establishing yourself as an expert.
I think the file was getting too big, so I
I've
had
been
to
awake for 40
restart it. What time is it?
So you stopped it and you restarted it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So can you talk about that? How you?
Yes. So I think this is probably.
And we'll put an outline together too, I think, of
Yeah.
how you're doing the meetings, right? So like the agenda, giving, like we talked about, giving them that it's okay to say no, making that super clear, what to expect, walking the house, building rapport, where you're asking about the house, but mainly about their situation, their motivation, the future perfect questions.
Yep.
And then you're sitting down at the table, and then you're educating them on the different options that they have available and establishing yourself as an expert. So we'll put like an outline together, I think, for this one.
This is, I think, the most important part of the meeting. It may not necessarily seem like that in the abstract that we're talking about, but this is where you're either going to build rapport or not. You're going to establish enough rapport so that you can then develop real rapport. Like, this is critical. Like, they're either going to kind of buy into you at this point or not. And so I think the way to educate somebody about something is not, you don't want to like preach to them, you don't want to give them opinions. You want to tell them things that are going to be sort of objectively true, and that they're gonna know and understand. For example, I almost always start that conversation by saying something like, anytime somebody's thinking about selling the house, they kind of have like two options. You know, they can put it on the market with an agent, or they can sell it to an investor. Nobody's going to disagree with that. And they're going to be like, yeah, okay, right? I'm with you. And so, and you're not telling them, you're not pushing one or the other. You're just saying, you got two options. You're kind of like, and they're like, yeah, okay. So both of them have pros and cons, right?
It's another thing where, you know, it also establishes some objectivity as well. Part of the trusting is that you're going to give both the pluses and the minuses of everything. So you're like a trusted advisor. It's a really powerful place to come from in sales. You establish yourself as an expert, and they can trust you because you're not just trying to push them in one direction by just saying everything is good about this, about our option, and all the bad stuff about the other ones. People know there's bad and good of everything. So you're establishing yourself as someone they can trust because you're going to get both sides.
And even if one of those options only had good things, people like, you were like, this car has this, you know, all these great things and it's cheap, and people are still going to be like, even if it's all true, they're going to be kind of like, sounds too good to be true.
What's the catch?
Yeah, exactly. So objectivity, the appearance of objectivity is like critical. So like, you got kind of two options, right? Both of them have pros and cons, or kind of benefits and cons to each of them. And nobody's going to dispute that, right? And that's the truth. And then I think it's, at this point, you're kind of keeping it high level still, because you don't want to like delve into any kind of like numbers, and that's just like real specific numbers you say. How would you, at a high level, Mark, explain the pros and cons of a listing versus a cash offer?
Hey, don't try to convince us, right? I think that's one of the other things you do well. Is just, you're literally just explaining, I think. Is that what you feel like you're coming from?
100% explain. You're saying
Just explain everything as truthfully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'd say, benefits of the listing are you definitely have the potential to net more money in the end, but then you also have to deal with the traditional, like the hassles of the traditional sale, just in a nutshell, I guess. But then when it comes to the cash buy, the great things are you don't have to worry about like the commission contingencies or anything like that. It's a quicker time frame, more sure thing the deal's going to go through. Downside would be that you are going to be getting a little bit less.
So I think that's kind of it in a nutshell, but I want to think about a couple of the words you just used. You said like cash side, the great thing. I wouldn't say that, right? That's a little bit salesy. Like at this point, you are telling them objectively, like you're getting down and dirty and just telling them what the absolute facts are.
So you wouldn't use any kind of
No.
you wouldn't use any kind of whatever
Adjectives.
qualifying words or whatever like that. Okay.
No. And when you said at the beginning, like you know, you could probably net more money. There's no probably about it. You will net more money on the market.
So that's good too, because you're also, again, you're just demonstrating that we're investors, so they're not expecting you to say that.
Mm-hmm.
That flips the sales script a little bit on them. We're like, wait, you're supposed to be selling me on how great this is, but you're saying I'm going to get more money if I don't. Like, sell the way that they think that we mainly buy. Like, they don't really know about the listing part as much.
Exactly.
So again, you're establishing, they're like, wow, that's surprising. Let me hear what this guy has to say. I didn't think he was going to say that.
So, and you can, you know, you're at this point, you're not even a little bit pushing them in one direction. All you're doing is educating them about some of the basic facts of one versus the other, why there's pros and cons, right? So, with a listing, you will get more money, always, on the market than with an investor. You know, that's one of the major upsides, and you can say that that's one of the major pros to doing it on the market. Okay, you know, some of the cons include, you know, it's going to take a little more time. There's uncertainty, and I think in general, what you want to sort of impress upon them, or not even impress upon them, but sort of say is that when you put it on the market, the timeline is out of your hands. Number one. Okay, don't have to say it like that, but that's the point you're making, right? There's more uncertainty with the timeline. Don't know how long it'll be on the market. Sometimes an offer will come in, you'll be under contract, and it will fall through. Everybody knows that to be true. You can even say something like, probably the most common reason that it falls through is you have a home inspection, and then the bank won't fund the mortgage for the buyer until somebody fixes this thing, and nobody wants to fix it, and then it falls through. Probably the most common, right? You're just telling them that. And then you could say, you got to kind of deal with, you got to deal with people kind of traipsing through the house, stuff like that. And everybody knows that, right? People won't want to come through with their agent at like 7 o'clock at night on a Tuesday and spend an hour. You'll have to leave, of course, and they'll walk through, and then, maybe they put it in an offer, maybe they don't. That doesn't sound appealing. There's not going to be one person in the world that sounds appealing to, right? But you're just telling them like something that they already know to be true, okay? So you're sort of breathing life into things that are not really desirable about listing without providing any sort of like pushing them in any direction. Then you do the same for the cash, right? The cash, one of the, and I always do the pros of the cash first, because people don't expect you to end by saying, the real con to the cash side is you're going to get less money.
So you start with the pros and the
Yes.
cash, and then you say with less money?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's easier, I say, like on the cash, that stuff that's easier to demonstrate. The value proposition there is sort of easier to explain, right? And in a word, it's convenience, right? But like, what does that mean? Well, close whenever you want, right? You take control of the timeline. You don't have to have people coming through your house. Blah 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 blah. You can leave any of your things that you don't want behind. But at the end of the day, the big thing is like, if you do the cash deal, you're not going to have to, like, we can sign this today and then you're done. You're done selling your house. That's the value. Like, you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to interview any agents. You don't have to do anything. And people generally don't, like it when they don't have to do anything. Like, take that one off my list. But the con is that you're going to get less money, and everybody's going to be like, oh, of course, you're right. Okay. And so, if that conversation goes like objectively, and you kind of explain it in a way where you are kind of being, it's not that it's not a sales conversation, it just doesn't have any appearance of salesmanship at all. Then you have basically kind of told them they've got two options, what the pros and cons of each option are, and then you've given them some information, you told them some good things about it, some bad things about each of them. Probably spend maybe a little more time talking about the negatives of the listing, not a lot, maybe a little bit. And then you try and put it back on them, right? So now you've demonstrated a lot of things. You've demonstrated, hopefully, that you know what you're talking about. You've given them some objective information, like basic facts that they're not gonna think that you're trying to sell them anything, because they're gonna agree with every single thing that you told them. Because everything you just told them is a fact that people know. And then you're gonna try and get them to start talking about which of those things that you just talked about do they care about. Right. So you have that conversation. So like, what are you thinking? What are some questions that you can put it back on them?
I think what I typically do is, I've been sitting here talking your ear off. Like, do you have any questions, or like, what do you think about like what I've been saying this whole time? And most of the time people
Don't say do you have any questions.
Okay.
They say no. Always open-ended questions, not a yes or no question.
For sure.
So like, what questions do you have? We just want open-ended way to ask that same question here. Just in general, try to ask any yes or no questions if you can avoid it.
And then, you want to get, once you've kind of had that, talk to them for that 5 or 10 minutes, it's not a long thing that you're doing, right? You don't want to like go on and on and on, right? Because people are gonna lose focus quickly, right? But then you can turn around and say, like, you want to know, basically, what is it that, after you tell them that, what do you want to know about their reaction to what you just told them? You want to find out about all the things that you just said. You're trying to figure out what resonated with them, right? Because there's going to be some of those things that you said they're not going to care about, and some of them they will, right? Like being able to leave all their shit at the house. Maybe somebody cares about that, maybe they don't. But there's going to be something in there that they do care about. So you have to figure out what that is, right? So what is the thing that you kind of are wondering if they care about that would make them more likely to go the cash route? Which is what we talked about earlier. The biggest reason that somebody, I think, would go for a cash option.
The effort.
Yeah, they don't want to deal, right? They can sign the contract today. You know, you wouldn't say it would. When they sign the contract, they can literally be done selling their house. That's a super powerful, concept. You know, people are, because they're like, shit, I gotta like find a realtor, I gotta talk to them, I gotta like do all the paperwork, I gotta go through 10,000 hoops, or I could just be done now and I don't have to do anything. Like, right? That's what you're hoping that appeals to them, and it's going to appeal to a lot of people. Whether that appeal is strong enough to overcome the price differential, you know, that's the question. But if they have any inclination towards that, I want to be done, I don't want to deal, then there's an opportunity, right? So how can you get at that? How can you get at that issue through, well, when you're going through the spiel at the beginning, that's why you want to have a little extra emphasis, not salesmanship, but emphasis on the inconveniences of working with a realtor. You're not going to call them necessarily like, you know, inconvenience, but like, you know, so you're going to have to kind of clean up the house, you'll do the paperwork with an agent, you'll probably have like open houses, and then you'll have showing times, and, you know, you're telling them what it is, and then all of it, you know, it sounds bad, right? It sounds bad. So you want to put a little bit of more emphasis on that, because that's if something's going to resonate with them that pushes them in the cash direction, it's going to be those things that they don't want to do. So that's got to be part of the spiel, and then you've got to come back to that afterwards, after you're done. So how can you try and get them talking about that thing?
I mean, I guess if you wanted to like put it right there in front of your face, I mean, just be like, so after everything that you've heard, like which do you think would be right for you? Like if you were to try to sell it, that'd be.
So I think your inclination is to do more of a sum up. Like, okay, so I've been talking a lot. What do you think about this, or what choice are you leaning towards? Like, I think it's easier to take it like in bite-sized chunks, right? So you don't want to make it feel like they're coming to any kind of decision point.
It also makes it seem like the meeting is more close to being over. Like
Exactly.
what we talked about, right? Is like just trying to have longer meetings with these people, like at least an hour minimum, if they have any sort of viability at all. You know, if it's a total, you know, their sister's an agent or something, just totally not qualified, then fine. But part of the way how he's doing that is he's taking it a lot slower, just to be more patient with it.
So, like, I might ask a question that is, like, have you started packing up? Have you started packing up your stuff? Because that's like, they're going to probably answer that question, right? It's not a scary question. They don't feel like they're under any kind of pressure. But it gets to the concept of, have you started doing things? And then they're going to tell you one way or the other, and you can listen and follow up from what they say. Or like, if they have like sometimes people have like a son or a grandchild that are living in the house. Where's that person going to go? Right, like a little.
So you start asking
bite-sized
about
question.
logistics, about how they're going to handle
Yes.
actually moving.
Yeah, and like even just kind of like, Yeah, but in like kind of in sort of like just a, like very bite-sized bits, right? Like not even like. And so let's talk about like logistics is more like. So
What do you do with all your stuff?
yeah,
Yeah.
like a lot of these people
That's
are
another one.
downsizing
Yeah.
to the they're going into retirement.
So like,
home.
have you started packing? What are you going to do with your stuff? If there's someone in the house, like, where are they going to move to?
Yeah.
Would you ask where the person themselves are going to go to as well?
Yeah, for sure.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, where you're gonna go. They're going to like if they want to downsize, which a lot of these people want to do, then you can be like, oh man, like how are you gonna deal with like all if they've been in a house for 30 years, you've got like a lifetime of stuff. Do you know how are you gonna deal with all this? You know,
Right, 'cause they have to figure out like what stuff they're going to keep and bring with
Yeah.
them. What stuff they're going to maybe try to sell. They think it's valuable. It's probably not. They might think it's valuable. What stuff they're going to maybe store
Mhm.
or whatever. You know, especially if they're downsizing, like you said.
And that's like a tall order for anyone, right?
It's a lot of stuff to think about and try to figure out.
It's a lot for any person to do downsize because everybody has tons and tons of crap, right? And so that will usually kind of like get them going a little bit. Maybe they can start telling you about how they don't like, oh, I haven't like trying to do this, or I've got all this furniture on, you know. And then
So
you
you're basically creating doubt. You're
Yeah.
creating doubt and uncertainty, fear and uncertainty really in their mind. Creating fear and uncertainty. Like they probably haven't thought through all these questions that are associated with them moving. Like, oh geez, I really have no idea what I'm going to do with all my shit. I don't really know exactly where I'm going to go. I'm going to figure that out. Damn, I don't want to figure that out. So there's like doubt, fear, uncertainty.
It's like if you were to like get an objection to like what are you planning on doing with your stuff, and somebody's just like flat out like, I don't know, like what would be?
Yeah, you can be like, yeah, fair enough, or whatever, and then you can
just like
be
change
like,
it.
I think like one thing that I do all the time, I think is effective, and I think that anybody can do it, sort of regardless of their personality, is you're asking a question about like something like packing up their stuff, or what are they going to do with their furniture, or whatever that may be, and then they'll say what they're going to say, and then you say something about yourself and that thing. Like I frequently will be like, oh, I just moved my grandmother into assisted living. She'd been in the house since the 40s. I mean, and I'll make a joke about it, right? We like, maybe you heard me say this, you know, we're like, she'd been in there for 40s, like, and she, I mean, I don't even know how one acquires all this. So she had like jars of marbles, and people like laugh, and they're like, and then so you're saying, I understand that what you're about to do is a pain in the butt because I just did it, right? You're like, yeah, it's terrible.
They're showing empathy.
Showing empathy, and you're also sort of telling them something about you, so you're building rapport, right? It's not just asking them questions, you're kind of opening up a little bit. So it's rapport building and it demonstrates empathy.
So you're sharing an anecdote.
Yes,
Yeah.
I do it all the time. And now you would have to come up with, you know, whatever, it doesn't really matter what it is, but something that's like sort of, you know, vaguely humorous but relates to the issue. And so like I'll talk about, you know, I talk about my wife a lot. You know, like they'll be like, oh, my wife is, you know, is mad at me about this, or like she doesn't listen to me, or you know, like like men understand that. That's the language that like every husband understands, right? So whatever it may be, you'll have to kind of think about that. But it generates rapport and empathy for like their situation. They're going to respond to that 9 out of 10 times, and you can do that more than once. So you ask them about moving, and then you talk about like their time frame, and then you can say something else. Be like, yeah, my parents just moved, and it took them like, you know, they were hoping to move in like 3 weeks, but it took them like 3 months. Like, just make something up. You're just telling them something about you that relates to their situation. Everybody likes hearing that you're dealing with the same problems that they are, right? Makes them feel like the problems that they have are universal, and oh, well, I can relate to. We can all relate, you know. And it legitimizes the issue, their fears, makes them kind of realize, oh yeah, and then they're more likely to talk. So like, I think those are, and we'll continue this next time, are I think sort of giving them a little bit of, you know, providing them sort of some objective guidance on what their options are, pros, cons to each, and then trying to get them talking about the things, figuring out what resonated with them in that pros cons conversation. And if it's going to be anything, it's probably going to be just this generic, you don't want to deal with all this shit, right? You got all this stuff in the house, you got to sell it, you got to fix things, blah 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 blah. It's going to take forever. When it's a process. It is like there's just no way around it. It's a process selling your house. Alternatively, you could be done.
Right, and you're saying the art is basically that depending on which direction, based on your walkthrough and their motivation and timeline and price they want, all the factors of motivation. Depending on that, you're going to emphasize a little more the negatives of whichever option you think they're not going to go for. That you're going to spend a little more time.
I would probably, yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I think, but at the point that I'm going through that, it's so hard to know though that I'm probably just going to spend like a little bit more time on the negatives of selling a house through an agent.
But just in general.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Not much, but I'm going to
Yeah.
go through that a little bit more.
If you had a pretty firm vibe that they were a better listing, would you
I would
not do
probably
that?
still do that.
You still do it?
Because if they're going to do a listing, then they're going to do a listing, and it doesn't matter.
Okay.
Because they're going to have to deal with that shit anyway.
Yeah.
The only question is who they're going to do it with. And then you have to, yeah, so I think what we should talk about next time is positioning, like explaining kind of like how to present in general terms the difference between in the money from the cash offer and what money you might get on the market, and continuing to explain sort of objectively what costs they will face doing it on the market versus doing a cash option. You don't want to make it sound like it's going to be like, oh, kind of at the end of the day, it'll be like net out, it'll be about the same. You want to be like, you're never going to get more money from a cash offer even after you pay those expenses. But this is what you should expect to pay, and you're kind of chopping that number down. And I would even say something about their tax liability if they have it, and kind of further chop that number down. Okay, and so that's what we'll talk about next time, because that makes, no matter what the cash offer is going to be, it's going to be a lot less than that market value sales price. So you've got to bring that spread down a little bit to make it so it's not like obscene, especially for somebody who's like not an imbecile, in my view. So, but we'll do like so I think, like John said, start putting together kind of like some scripting around this first part of the conversation, and next Tuesday we'll talk more about the money. So I want to think about that. We'll do some more role playing too on what we talked about today.
Yeah, and we'll do an outline. We should do an outline of the whole, like from here to the conclusion as well, and then how long it typically is taking you for each section as well, just to give you more guidance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Marble. Questions, thoughts, concerns?
No, I think I'm good.
What's the biggest roadblock that you think that you're encountering in terms of what do you think the biggest objection that you're facing is? I know you're not really focused on it at this time, but like cash, what's your biggest sort of fear about the cash presentation?
I think it's just going to be just how much less they're going to be getting for taking the cash offer. Because like most of the time I'm going on appointments with people who owe a decent bit of money on it.
Right.
Or have like a general idea as to what they could get for it if they were to put it on the open market. So it's,
well, I think that's good. Like, and we'll talk about that more. But to respond to that, like, I don't think you, I tell them like a general range of what I think they can get on the market, and like I basically just tell them they're going to get a fair amount more. And and even if they didn't have enough equity to do the cash yield, I would still explain both options to them to establish that sort of expertise. And then just say, given where you are equity-wise, this isn't an option that's viable for you. I mean, I think that's okay to say or whatever, but I think that you can't hide from the number, right? The cash number is what the number is, and so we have to like sort of embrace that a little bit more. And that'll be part of that is just being very, very upfront about it. and that generic explanation at the beginning. And then part of it is going to be how it's positioned later in the meeting when you're talking about the details, which we'll discuss more next time.
Yep.